Welcome to Iron Butterfly Podcast. My name is Megan Jaffer.
And I'm Katie Hopkins, and we'll be your hosts.
We created Iron Butterfly Podcast in honor of Eloise Page, the original Iron Butterfly. Our podcast continues her legacy, inviting the unsung heroines of the United States intelligence community to share their stories with aspiring leaders like you.
Hey everyone, my name is Bethany Valenti, and I'm going to be introducing our guest today. But before that, I will tell you a little bit about my background. I'm currently a full-time graduate student at Texas A&M University's Bush School of Government and Public Service at the Washington, D.C. teaching site, obtaining a degree in national security and intelligence. SIM Software gave me the privilege to introduce our extraordinary guest today, Yolanda Reid. She is an associate partner in cybersecurity, currently focused on preparing organizations for the coming wave of quantum computing. With a rich and varied background, Yolanda has thrived across the cybersecurity spectrum, working both offensively and defensively, and even spent time scaling antenna towers collecting RF signals, which, that involved rappelling from heights. Known for being hardworking, passionate, and dedicated, Yolanda is a loving, fun, and faithful individual who brings both heart and intellect to everything she does. She's currently completing a PhD on AI adoption in the aerospace and defense industry, merging deep technical insight with forward-thinking strategy. A fun fact about Yolanda is that she owns a handmade axe by Jason Momoa. So Aquaman himself. When not immersed in the digital battlefield, she's a proud cheer mom, an avid traveler, and a lover of food, wine, and lake life with her fiance. Yolanda, welcome to Iron Butterfly.
Welcome to Iron Butterfly, Yolanda. We're so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here. Actually honored and humbled, actually. You bring on amazing guests, and some people I've worked for, and some people I always wanted to chat with. And then when you called and said for me to be on, I was like, wow, me?
Oh my goodness.
Of course. We feel the same way.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, we're very excited, and we are honored that you said yes. This is going to be fun, and we're just going to jump in.
Yep.
All
Let's do
right.
it.
So we always kind of start the same way because we want the viewers to kind of understand who you are and where you came from. So let's start from where you grew up and how did you grow up and where, what part of the country, and what brought you to national security?
Yeah. So I grew up in Houston, Texas.
Nice.
And I was super nerd, and I'm super nerd. I didn't have role models of what it was like to be a nerdy girl, but I set the stage for others to follow me, and I went to an engineering high school.
Okay.
And it was a nationally ranked public school, engineering high school for engineering professions. I was on the first girl on the robotics team.
Oh, love that.
And when NASA started doing the first robotics, I was one of the first people to do it. So I'm that old. and so that's how I got my Letterman jacket, was being on a robotics team and not doing sports. So super nerd. And
When did you first know that you were a nerd, growing up? Before robotics era.
When did you identify?
Yeah.
I think so. I identified when I started robotics team, but before, why did I go to the high school? I knew two things about engineers. They were a career that mostly men had, and I wanted one of those careers. And I saw engineers travels, and I wanted to travel. So that's how I made this decision to go to an engineering high school. And then when I was on robotics team, then we were putting together a robot. We're putting wires together. I started a fire, and I thought it was so cool. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do this as a career. So this is why I always recommend mentorship, because I did make, really crazy decisions based on weird things. But that's how I decided to start electrical engineering, is that I wanted to create fires with wires. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. That should be on a shirt. That should be on a
So,
shirt.
sorry, I'm not an engineer, so I just need to clarify. Were you making fires on purpose?
I wasn't. It just happened. You put two wires together, they sparked, it had a little fire, and I was like, oh, cool.
Ooh, that looks dangerous. I'll take more of that, please.
That was my danger. So that's how I started at the high school. And then I took lots of classes. I doubled up on math and science. So in my senior year, I had a lot of spare time. So I spent time in the office just helping the counselors and things. And an application came across her desk and said I didn't have to write a new essay. I already had this essay written many times for colleges and scholarships. And it's like, hey, are you a U.S. citizen? Can you answer this question that I had the essay already written, and then send your transcript? And so I'm like, and and they'll pay your tuition. So I was like, oh, that sounds great. So I sent it. I didn't even tell my parents. And I sent it in, and then I even put the school address and school phone number on it. I don't know. And they called the school and said that I got selected for an interview. And then I had all day to figure out how to tell my parents, like, what I just did. and I was like, oh, I got an interview in Maryland. No, you can't go. Well, they're paying for it. It's like they're paying my flight, my taxi, and the hotel. So I should go. And they talked to my uncle who was in the Air Force, and he was somewhere in Virginia. And he was like, the National Security Agency, she has to come. And I didn't know what the National Security Agency was, but I knew that my uncle said I had to come, and I got a free trip. And I came and did a polygraph. And and so I was 16 or 17 years old getting a polygraph. I thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world. I'm, they're asking, have you ever plotted to overturn the government? I mean,
you're like, ma'am, I'm 16.
I'm 16.
Did you laugh during it?
Oh my gosh, yes. I totally laughed. I was laughing. I was giggling. And then I took the polygraph after they fed us lunch. And so I laughed, I giggled, and then in between questions, there's a pause. I don't know why there's a pause. I even fell asleep, and I took a 20-second nap, and then I kept answering questions. And so some people came in later, and it's like, do you have something to tell us? And I was like, I took a 20-second nap because of the buzzing. And then they looked at me, and then they looked at the results. They walked back out, and apparently I passed. And I got a call back a little later, and they said, do you want this? And I said, yeah, because it's free tuition. And it's an internship every summer, and I get paid. So that's how I made the decision. And that year, I went to the movies with my friends, and Enemy of the State came out. And I went to go see Enemy of the State with my friends, and there was a murder in the first opening scene.
Yeah.
And, they said that they're NSA, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to kill people. What did I sign up for? I'm going to kill people. And that's how I got started.
This is how they get the money to pay for my scholarship.
I know, I'm going to. And so that's what I signed up for. And, they did the background check. Like, I worked at Burger King. So they came and talked to my Burger King manager. They talked to my English teacher. They all loved it because the Men in
They
Black.
thought it was cool.
Yeah. And we just had this movie come out. And Burger King even had the Men in Black, Enemy of the State and Men in Black toys and gadgets and stuff. So these people came to interview right after these movies were coming out. So everybody was enjoying this thing. And so that's how I got started at NSA. And I was only going to be there for 5.5 years. That's what my commitment was. And then I think 2 or 3 years after I started NSA, 9/11 happened. And so that really sealed my commitment. I was like, I am going to stay here because look what just happened, and there's bad guys out there. And that was the first time I ever heard the term terrorist. No, it's the second time. The first time I heard the word terrorist, like there was gates popping up at government facilities. It was anti-terrorist acts and anti-terrorist measures. And I remember asking my boss, what is terrorism? And it was that summer that we had 9/11. And then I figured out what terrorism was, and I didn't like it. So I was very committed. Like, we're going to do whatever we can to go after bad guys. And so that's what I did. I spent a career doing CT from a nerding perspective. I did a lot of collection, fibers, satellites, whatever, computers, cyber. We didn't have the term cyber at that time. It was a long time ago. And I was going after bad guys. That's what I want. I wanted to be able to provide information before these people did something to us.
So I want to go back before we kind of dive into the NSA career. So just because, I mean, you're 16 and you like, whoa.
I think that's the earliest
I think so.
story we've ever heard.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think Chatia had like something where she had gone early to college, but not like she didn't get like an internship.
Mm-hmm.
So you were going to college and then having this internship at NSA.
Yes.
And so where did you were going to college in Maryland?
No, I went to Vanderbilt. I ended up going to Vanderbilt University for electrical engineering. And so,
oh my gosh.
So how it ended up working, I moved out the house in August before I started school.
So how old were you?
So I was
17
or 18, right around there.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I reported to work, and it was very military-like, and so I learned military terms. And so I reported to work, and I went to work in August. And then after I did my short tour, then I started my freshman year. So drove to Nashville. And then the first Monday after school ends, you have to report to NSA.
Wow.
So if school ended on a Friday, you were there on Monday. If you ended on a Wednesday, you were there on Monday. And so you always are hoping to get the earliest finals possible, because I had to truck it and report to NSA on Monday. And so that's what I did. And I stayed until it's time to go back to school. And then I drove from Maryland to Vanderbilt, and so back and forth. And my parents, they switched out. And so one trip my mom might come to help me drive, and the other trip my dad. And I don't know how they figured out who's doing what. It had no pattern at all. But that's what I did. I went back and forth.
And you had like a summer apartment or something like that while you were here?
Yeah. So not the same one, but I did have a summer apartment. And so, I brought whatever fit in my car. And then everything else just was in different people's houses until I graduated. Then I had to report the first Monday after graduation. And then, gather all your stuff from everywhere that your stuff was. And I had to start working. And so that's what I did.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
So you mentioned it was a very military environment. Like, in your 17-year-old mind, when you started at NSA, what do you remember your first impression being?
Oh my goodness. It was so much. In the parking lot, everyone had nice cars. I'm like, oh, we're going to make good money. So that was my first thought. And then there were so many military people. And then I was like fresh meat, I'm this girl, I'm a female, not too many females. I'm walking around tank top, jeans, and flip-flops. I'm from Houston. And so I had a flip-flop in every color. So I stood out.
Oh my God, the flip-flops.
Oh my goodness.
You would have filled in just right.
I know. I think we would have been friends.
That was my life. I was just flopping all over the place, and people commented on it a lot. And so I was different. But then they were respectful, right? And then I brought in a lot of the southernness. Like I remember I worked in this one building. If I walked through, when I first walked through the door, if someone's right behind you, you hold the door open for someone. Well, they didn't do that, and I didn't like that. So I would hold the door open for the person behind me. And by the end of the first summer, did you know that whole building was holding doors after
Wow,
for the next
love
person?
it.
And so,
Trailblazer, culture creator.
that's
Love
right.
that.
It's the only right thing to do. So yeah, so it was an interesting place to be, and I was definitely in the research and engineering area. And so a lot of people put their head down. They didn't talk to your face. They talked to your shoes, and it was just a different environment. But I did enjoy the nerdy part, right? I got to touch data. I got to touch computers. Computers were still relatively new. I mean, I remember a gig hard drive was a huge thing at the time. And so it was rare to have something like that. And so being able to use data to help solve problems that were hard, I didn't understand my first year what national security was. But I did know I was solving problems that was going to be helpful.
I love that. So going back to your time at NSA, so when you watch movies
Yeah.
about the CIA, it's always like this felt sexy guy,
Yeah.
right? Tall, dark, and handsome. When you watch movies about NSA, it's like some evil genius in a basement or something. Is that accurate? Or like, why do you think that is?
So I think it's culture, and it's funny. I at my current job, I'm at IBM, and I had a lot of interaction with the CIA in my time here, and I was weirded out by the people at the CIA because they were so friendly. And I mean,
Friendly? I have never heard that adjective.
oh my goodness. They were so friendly. They were asking my day, my kids, all of this stuff. And I'm like, why are you so friendly? I don't know you. And so I had someone explain to me, like a counterpart, because I kind of represent the NSA side. And they were like, oh, well, people have these misconceptions about the CIA. They think that they're just going to stab you in the back and all of this kind of things. But they're really friendly because that's how they get their information from
They're
you.
inquisitive.
Oh.
Friendly, inquisitive.
Yeah.
Fine line.
They were I'm telling you, over the top, like, friendly. It's like, oh, where did you get that purse? Your shoes. I love it. And it's one thing when it was a female, but it was males of all ages. I mean, it was a lot that I couldn't handle. And I was like, I want to go back to the hallways at NSA right now because we talk with a purpose and then we stop talking.
I love that. You're too friendly. Yolanda is on to you.
It's like, oh my goodness, it was very uncomfortable. But so I think a lot of that portrays in the movies a little bit. NSAers are more, technical. It's a technical mission, so they're more to themselves. We like partitions. We don't really want to talk unless we have to. And the funny story about that is I remember I was doing a move into a new building. We got a great new building coming out the basement. And people it's my first management job. And I had an actual employee crying on the floor. And the reason why is we were in an open concept room.
Oh my gosh.
And we didn't have partitions. And that's part of the culture because partitions is private and you have your time to think through hard problems. This was trying to make people talk. And she had a breakdown on my floor. So that's our culture. Our culture is we want to think, we want to do the hard problems, and then the other side they're social and they want to meet with people and they care about their appearance way more, and and that's portrayed in these movies.
Oh my God, that's
Wow,
hilarious.
this is the best. I mean, insider information. And like, it's funny because people who are in the IC like know the cultures, right? Like they know the culture of CIA and NSA. That's like, but for the people who are listening that are not in the know, this is great tea that is being spilled.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go through like some of the jobs that you held at NSA and like what, what your career trajectory was there, like, and let's go through that, but also stop at the places where, like some of the jobs that you really loved and why.
Yeah. So I was at NSA 21 years.
Wow.
And I really didn't think I was leaving. I was an NSAer, and I had intern jobs, and then I had permanent assignments, and then I had little jobs in between the permanent assignments for growth and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot. I mostly did things on that protects go after the bad guy side, right? There's a protect the mission side of NSA, and then there's the go after the bad guys, where you can get intelligence, and then you can provide it to our stakeholders where they can make the best decisions to keep us safe. And I did have an opportunity to work both sides, but I love go get them. To be quite honest, that's the side that I was most comfortable with, and it was very rewarding. So I worked a lot of collection, being an engineer. So I did some RF work. I went to school first to do microelectronics, and what I was going to do at microelectronics is secure microelectronics. That's what I went to Vanderbilt for. That's what I thought. That's where I was making my A's. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to do this for a mission. Mm-hmm. When I graduated, I got a call like a few months before I graduated. And, I have to report on Monday, right after graduation. So a few months before, they go, Yolanda, I don't know how to tell you this, but that job that you had, and I did spend a summer working on secure microelectronics and reversing microelectronic chips. It went away. And I was like, what? Yeah, your job was, for the first time, we've never done this before, we outsourced it. And we don't know how it's going to go, but you're going to have to find a new job. And so we're going to authorize you a job finding trip. So I went back to work during my spring break. That's how I spent my spring break. I had to go back to NSA and go find a job that was going to work when I actually graduated. And a funny point about the job going away, when they outsourced it, part of it went to Intel and part of it went to IBM. And that's the full circle of how I got to IBM today. But I'll get to that later. But I went to NSA to go find my new job that was in microelectronics, and I had no mentor whatsoever at the time. And I always suggest you have a mentor to help you guide you in a logical way. And I decided, like, I studied digital signals and processing, and so I'll just do analog signals. How hard can that be? It's similar, right? We had analog before we went digital, so I did RF stuff. And this is before, cell phones really blew up and everybody had one. Only a few people had it. I'm like, I'm going to do that. That's how I started my career. I was going to.
And can you talk about when you say RF stuff?
Yeah.
Let's double click on that. What do you mean by that?
So the signals that are going through your air. So before we had Bluetooth, which came later, cell phones were taken off. And before cell phones were taken off, we had antennas that would send information, military information, all over the place. And so all those signals in the air is called RF, or radio frequencies. So I was like, okay, well, that's the original signals. And so if I learned the newer signals, which was digital, how hard can it be to go backwards? And so I choose that. And I learned the hard way. It's not similar at all. But I already had a job, and I learned how to design antennas, and then I got to install them. And then part of that job was that if you look outside, there's antenna towers. I would have to climb antenna towers. And,
no way.
And we installed them, and I would have always a military crew with me. And I thought that was the coolest job coming out of college. I went to be a nerd. I came out, and now I'm on towers. And the only way we come down off of towers is rappelling. And so I did rappel work. So it's kind of Superman-like, and
that's awesome.
and all of that, or Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man-like. And that's how I started my career full time, was doing that work. And so I traveled a lot, a lot. My mom teased me, and she was like, why do you even have an apartment or a place to live? Because it's just storage. I'm never home. I was gone every month except December. And coming out of college, I didn't know anybody. I just moved from Texas to Maryland. And so it was great for me. Single life. I didn't know anyone. I'm traveling. I'm loving every trip. And then I get to rappel. And so
Who knew? No one, I could put money on it, would think that, when you think about the IC and you think you're thinking you're thinking James Bond, you're thinking CIA. No one is thinking that like an NSAer who's usually like in the computer,
The dark
like
basement,
dark
yeah.
basement is rappelling off of towers.
No, that's wild.
yeah,
That's
wild.
awesome.
I didn't know what I signed up for, and then I just enjoyed the ride. And this was definitely before 9/11, and then it started what has, when I reflect back, started planting seeds in me. And so one day I was working on Friday late, and I think I'm doing like a trip report, getting it done, and a call comes in, and they're like, hey, is this the antenna shop? And I'm like, yeah. And it's like, do you have people there right now? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. And it's like, we need help, and we need help now. And all the leaders are gone at this point. And they said that they had some technology that they needed to test because there was some military people that were lost, and they needed to track and find them. And they had little beakers on them.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they needed to test out this new equipment. And so I was like, oh, okay. And they needed to ship it that night. So I was like, okay, I'm going to call my military guys and see who's in the shop, and we're going to meet you at this tower. And it's pouring rain. It was not a tropical storm, but whatever. So it was a tropical depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and one of the guys, we went and we took this equipment up and we set it up, and we did testing on it. And I was able to give them the best advice I can give you, because I've only been working this job like 5 months, but I gave them the best range I could of how to use this and what it should be able to do. It went on the plane that night. They went to go find the people. One person was saved, one person was not. And I realized, like, this is what I want to, I absolutely want to do this. I want to be able to use my knowledge to save people.
Mm.
And it also taught me, like, there was a crisis. And so what do you do in a crisis? And it started that path of how to be calm and think things through, use what you got, lead people, and then come. And that is really a lot of what I did when I was at the agency. I earned 5 military medals in my time there as a civilian. And
Just to pause there, that's crazy. That's like very rare for people to walk away with that. Like,
yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, it was when you care about others and you care about life, it just came.
It was natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never wrote myself up for an award or anything
Right,
like that.
of course.
But it just comes when you are passionate and you care. And so that's what I did. I took mission very, very seriously. And so I went from RF, and then and I got promoted, especially after that. Got a lot of press and attention. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do RF in the sky. So I'm going to do satellites. And again, I had no mentorship at this time. And so I just make these crazy decisions. And I did a tour where I went to another agency. I went to NRO, which did satellites. And I was an integrate. And so I got my joint duty. I got to work my first exposure to CIA. And I worked in this joint environment with the CIA, NRO, Air Force, and then I was the NSA, and that was incredible. And then same thing, you're using technology to be able to go, keep our country safe. And so that's where I picked up most of my medals. Even though they didn't give it to you right when you finish the job there, it came 4 or 5 years later. But
Wow.
it's still like, wow, you thought of me. This after I've been there, done that. The awards came, and then I came back and I got back to things that I touched when I was interning, which was cyber. I touched cyber as an intern. So now I'm leading. How do we lead in this space? And I enjoyed that. I had some good tours and I got to lead people. I came in with a lot of positive energy, poor workforce when they first met me because my first group that I had been in place for like 30 years. And then here comes me, Bubbles, still in flip-flops, trying to lead them. And we made it work and they end up loving me and appreciating me. And they're like, Yolanda, you stay calm in chaos. And there was always a lot of chaos. And then I worked in some cyber operations after Snowden, and people were down, like, what do we do? He gave up some things, and then he also made up some things, and now everybody hates us. And I was like, well, the same minds that we had before Snowden are the same minds we have here. And we're very creative, and so lead people to innovate and to focus on what the mission is. And so I enjoyed being a part of that innovation and motivation and calming people down. Probably, I had this pattern built up, and we were able to create new capabilities to be able to secure our stuff. And it was very exciting. And then it came to a point. Do you remember in the news when a lot of journalists or heads were being chopped off? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where
Oh,
was
yeah.
that? In what country?
In Afghanistan.
It was definitely in the Middle East, and it was really, really hard. And so we got to use like what we put together, what we were trying to innovate, to find artifacts to find these people before. And so sometimes we were successful. You never heard about the success. And then sometimes we weren't. Mm-hmm. And that was very hard to lead people in that kind of time period, because every time a head comes off, you lost. And I had to tell them. And I was like, well, it's not just you. It's the whole U.S. government was going after. It's just some problems we can fix, some we can't. And I was very fortunate to be able to get a clear counselor, to be in my office space, because when you don't win, it hurts. When you have people that are here for not the profit, not for the fame, for actually saving lives, it hurts. And that's the kind of teams that I led. And I enjoyed leading those teams. And it became a part of my identity. Now, what also happened around leading these kind of things is I end up, during that time period, finding out I had cancer. And I had this major surgery. It was major. And they said it'll take 8 weeks to recover. I'm like, you don't know me. I'm going to recover in 6. And so I put my out of office message for 6 weeks. I'll be back in 6 weeks. And then we're going to keep going because the mission was so great, right? And what I didn't know going in, we didn't think it was cancer at the time, but we knew it was something weird. When they took the tumor out, it was only 1 centimeter. They tested it. They found out it was cancer. It was very aggressive cancer. If I left it in, it would have killed me within 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And when they went in, they took out this tumor that was very suspicious, 1 centimeter, but a lot of little fingers going off of it. They took everything out that this thing might have touched. So my rib came out. They cut out my core.
Oh my God.
My lungs collapsed. I was a big puddle of jello. And when I came out of surgery after the 6 weeks, my mind is like, I'm coming back to fight these bad guys. My body wasn't ready. And I was only given I could only work 8 hours a week. And wouldn't you know, I came in those 8 hours a week and I couldn't walk. I got a little buggy. I came in. The mission was so great. And I wanted to help. And it came to a point that I had to learn the hard way. Someone's like, Yolanda, you get done in 8 hours, what takes people like a week or two. We admire you, but you need to get better. And so that's when I took leave. That's when I used Family Medical Leave Act. That's when I used all the sick leave that I've earned all of these decades, like over a decade now. And I took time off and I recovered. And so I did put national security ahead of my own health. And that's something that I don't recommend to people. I did it so naturally. So it really took cancer. It really took all of that to reprioritize life and find out what is really important, because saving lives is important, but taking care of
your
yourself
own life
is very important. And then the time that you spend with your family. So they gave me 1 year to live in 2013. And my child was 4, turning 5. And so it put it in perspective. I might not see my child graduate kindergarten. And so I had to learn the hard way. What is really important is, take care of you and your family. And your job is your job. But it's not your life.
That's
Wow.
incredible. What does it feel like to survive something like that?
It's very complicated. It feels good because, my daughter just got her learner's permit. So I'm way beyond the 1 year to live. So I'm very grateful to have her and to participate in raising her. So that feels really good. I'm very thankful for that. It feels bad to survive sometimes because along the journey, you meet people, like when you're going to radiation and you're going to these things and they don't make it. And I joined some groups. I know my church had a group that they were starting, and there was a mother in there. Her daughter's the same age as mine. She had breast cancer and she didn't make it. So you have survivor guilt. And so I had to work on that. I had to go see a therapist to work on that. After I identified, I felt guilty for surviving. Like, why am I here? Or some of the people I met started charities through their journey, and I never started a charity. And I'm like, why did I survive and they didn't? There's so much, they have done so much in this world. So there's some guilt that comes along with that. But then it shapes you as well. So I'm not the same person today that I was before, right? I feel more balanced, and I try to do a balance check every couple of months because I can get out of balance. And, old habits are hard to break. And, but I feel a whole lot more balanced. I feel like I'm living life more with purpose than I was before. Because before I was like national security, and I was like.
But what's interesting is you've always lived life with purpose. I would argue, just a different type of purpose.
Yes, a more, I guess, more valuable purpose, because at the end of the day, while I was doing good work at the agency, when I wasn't there, they went and got 2 people, and they called me and they said, Yolanda, we're gonna take your spot, and we're gonna put 2 people in there, right? You should feel honored, right? It's gonna take 2 people to fill in your role, but work still got done without me, And so all of that purpose, I mean, it's going to get done. So where do you want to put that energy, right?
Yeah.
And so just balancing it out a lot more is a different purpose.
What I thought was really special is the support that you got during this hard time. And I remember you recently, you reached out to me because we were interviewing, or we were going to do an event with some iron butterflies. And you had said, you reached out to me and you said, I love those people or that person. Yes. And they were really, they were there for me and they supported me during this really difficult time. And yes. I think that's like that's beautiful. And it kind of, I think it's important to mention just because, you know, one of the things we try to do here at Iron Butterfly is put faces to faceless organizations, right? And that there are souls and there are people, yes. right? And there's a community of people, and they care about each other and they help each other. And that was that's an example.
It was incredible because when you go through, like, you know, your life is on the line like that, you think you know what support system you're going to have. And when you're faced with it, it was not true. But then there was people that just came out and supported that didn't even know a whole lot of what's going on. They just know they wanted to help, and they know that I was so passionate about working and the mission, and they loved me from that they wanted to help me through this journey. And so, yes, and so one of the people you interviewed was Jenna, and she was an executive assistant at one time. I was an executive assistant, and then we had another friend, Paula, and Jenna and Paula on their own decided that they were going to cook meals, and they cooked so many meals for my family that before I went into surgery, the last thing I bought was a deep freezer. Oh and I filled up the deep freezer because they cooked that many meals. They spent a weekend and did that.
Wow.
And they were like, oh, yeah, you're going to, you know, I was telling everybody in 6 weeks, I'm going to be out 6 weeks. So they cooked 6 weeks of food. And
wow.
And then also at one point, Easter came, and I had 2 girls at home at the time. And my memory, I was so drugged. I was only really woke 1 hour a day for a very long time. And I knew Easter was coming, and I got a dress, but I forgot everything else you do. I forgot the eggs. I forgot the Easter dinner. I forgot all those things. I didn't have all my brain at the time. And they filled in. They called and said, hey, stop by. We're bringing Easter dinner for your family. And they brought Easter baskets.
Oh, my gosh.
For my 2 girls. And I forgot all about Easter baskets because I had very little consciousness at that time. And so it meant the world because I couldn't set up. I was in a wheelchair for 2.5 years. And so cooking a meal was not the thing that I could do easily. And I had these 2 girls. And then also I couldn't hold food. I went down to 89 pounds.
Oh my God.
And so I was very, very frail. And so having meals there was something I didn't have to worry about because I cared about my family so much, and they were taken care of. But yeah, the community, you know, when you are fighting the bad guys, you come together as a community, and they filled in. So between them and my church, I had a group, a women's group at church. It was 10 or 12 of us, and they cooked meals. And then most of them were retired. It's an older church. And they came up with a schedule. And they're like, these are your local drivers that can drive you around to doctor appointments. I was doing 12 doctor appointments a week.
Oh
and
gosh.
These are the ones that are okay with driving on the Beltway and could take you to Georgetown. And they would check in every 3 to 4 weeks. I never asked anything. And they were like, do you need our help? So the community came in. My mom came in when she could. She was working, so she took FMLA. and helped, like, right when surgery happened, and she felt so miserable to leave me, but then she saw the community. And so, and I just learned, I thought I was a nice person, but then I learned like so many ways to be nicer, as that people were nicer to me. And so it was a great thing to happen. I know cancer sucked, but the love was incredible that you learned through it.
Wow. There's tissue right next to you if you want. It's on the other side of that little cow.
The other side of the cow. Just reach right around that cow. Yolanda, I think I have one follow-up question to this, which is, I think many of us at some point in our lives will know someone who is struggling, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's cancer, whether it's, a tragedy in the family, whether it's, name your thing, right?
Yeah.
Having been through something like that, I'm curious what you would say to people, because I think when you're watching someone go through something like that, you're not always sure what to do and how you can support, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is say to that person, what can I do for you, right?
Yeah.
Because it puts the burden on that person, right?
Yeah.
So what advice would you have on just how to support someone? What were the most helpful things or helpful ways that you were supported during that time?
So, yeah, if people said that they would be there for me, right? And I would have to come up with what I wanted. And I didn't have the capacity. So whatever your gift or your talent is, just offer and see if they would take it. I had I had my two girls at home at the time. And so someone offered in the Intel community, and she offered just to come pick up my girls for the weekend. She's like, I don't have girls. I have two boys, but I know how to lock them up. And and she picked them up, and they came back and they did art projects. I mean, there's no way I was going to be able to do that. And I saw the bowl created. I don't know what they melted. They melted crayons or something and created a bowl. I saw that bowl this morning, and so, and I'm going to keep it forever, because that was just one of those things that I had no capacity to even think to do that. And food was helpful, because that was a big help. The transportation was a big help, because I couldn't drive, or I would get pulled over for DUI, and then I have a whole clearance thing to still worry about, right? And so I didn't want to get in trouble with the drugs that I was given from the hospital. And so those were really, really helpful. People sent cards at the right moment. Like, whatever your gift is, your thing is, just offer, and see if that would be a help. That was it. I when I started to eat again, I discovered things from people. Like, I didn't know the love for Trader Joe's, but man, some people found some things. Like, there's only a couple of things I could actually taste. It was fruit, real fruit. So artificial fruit, it tastes like water. But real fruit, I was able to taste real fruit, and I was able to taste ketchup. And they took those two things and they experimented with Trader Joe's.
Incredible.
And they brought stuff. And so it was just like experiments. Like, can I taste this? And I start discovering they had some really good things that I discovered along the way. But at the end, some people have a hard time asking for help. I know I did. I was never a person to ask. I'm the person to help you. So I didn't know how to ask. But then I didn't also know what to ask for. And so I was very glad the community did.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's a really special story, and a very personal story that I think will help a lot of people on different levels, those that are going through it and those who want to help but don't know how. And I love that you said, use your gift, because I might not be a good cook, but I'm good at crafts, right? Like, or I'm good at just sitting with you and watching a movie or whatever, right? And so I love that, the way you articulated that. Just use your gift. So you did get better.
Yes.
And did you go back to NSA?
Of course I did. I was ready to get back into it. I really, really was. And so I stayed out as long as the doctors told me to. I mean, they were, do not rush back. No, we're not clearing you. I mean, I was in really bad shape. And then at some point, the leaves started to go. And then the community, right? In the government, we had Leaf Bank, and from day one, I gave to Leaf Bank. And so if you give, you're able to receive. And it was time for me to use Leaf Bank, and I wrote my letter that was going to go out to the whole community to request leave for kids to stay out some more. And I got a call the Friday before it went out on Monday. It said, Yolanda, you're not going to believe this, but an anonymous donor just maxed out your account. We never even released your letter. And I still to this day do not know who it was.
Wow.
And I know it was just one donor who had a ton of leave. And so I always have my suspicions of who I think it is and who would have that much leave. And I'm pretty sure, I have my guesses. And I don't know. I really have no clue. Only the Leaf Bank knows, and they wanted to be anonymous. And so I was able to stay out. And in that time, after I got the Leaf Bank, I did a crazy thing. I listened to my doctor. My doctor asked me to telework. And I was like, do you know where I work? And they were like, well, if it's that hard to telework, then you better start working on it now. And I had a great former boss, executive, and I called him at his house. I used the Google, and I was like, what's his phone number? And I called him, and he answered my call and said, Yolanda, I'm sorry everything you're going through. And I told him, and he's like, yeah, there's things you could totally do at home, right? And we didn't have telework at that time. And so he's like, let me talk to some people. And he talked to some people, and they created an assignment. And so I worked for NSA in my bed when I couldn't work. And so it was hard because it was new, and it was interesting. And so every so many weeks, the person in charge of the signals director, the go after the bad guys side, would have a meeting to check to make sure I have work. And I didn't know that until after I got better, but I was very, very grateful, right, that there was an advocate out there. And I worked from bed, so I helped work on recruiting. And so some people, they get frustrated with like the time for clearances and polygraphs and everything. It takes a long time to get through, and I walk them through. I end up mapping out the entire process by observation of how they get hired. So if someone got stuck in a spot, I would identify this person stuck, and then try to get grease on it to get the wheels rolling to get people hired. So I was able to get 32 people hired from my bed that wouldn't have made it through the process because of the process is long. And so when I came back, I knew I wasn't in a spot that I can just go straight back into, my cyber roles that I was in. And I end up doing shift work. And people are like, what in the world? Why would you do that? It ended up being great for healing because it's a set schedule. I either work 3 days a week or work 4 days a week. And then I have the rest of the week off to schedule my appointments and to rest. And then there's 2-week breaks. And so I was able to spend that 2-week breaks with my daughter and resting and doctor's appointment. And so I was able to recover so fast doing shift work, which you would think would be crazy. And the community helped. When I was on day shift was the hardest, like what am I doing with my daughter? Because as one of my bosses said, of course, only you, Yolanda, will homeschool your daughter while fighting cancer. And I did. And so, if I only made it a year, I didn't want her in school that year. And
Wow.
I would lose that opportunity of spending time with her and instilling good values in her and things. So I homeschooled her, and then she did so well. she's like, Mommy, can you homeschool me? And so I'm like, I don't know, because I'm a working mom and everybody else is not. But we made it work, and I was able to do it on shift work, to homeschool her, and it's only 7 days. I had trouble, and so I was able to find assistance with those 7 days when I had to do day shifts, and I worked on enterprise IT. So when upgrades happen, they break, I was the person calling you from home, and I was the person calling executives of like, this is a major issue, and I rolled back into the agency doing that, and then I went back to cyber, and then I did a cyber watch floor. So before SOCs were hot, I was running help running a SOC. I focused
And what
on
is a SOC?
Security Operating Center, and
Okay,
so
gotcha.
they do 24 hours a day, 365 monitoring of systems to see if there's any cyber attacks. And so, and if there were any potential attacks, it was my decision to decide what to do. And so that was my job, and I ran a floor, and I wore my cyber shirt for them. I was team two.
Oh, I love that.
That's
And
amazing.
it has all the little cyber symbols up there of what could happen on the back of my shirt. It has in binary ones and zeros, very nerdy.
We're going to take a picture of that after this. You're going to take off your jacket. We're going to take a picture.
And so there was a phrase my team says, we don't do stupid. And so they actually put that in binary. And so there's
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
so that's the back of my shirt. And so I was like, I feel cyber today. I'm breaking out the shirt that we all wore proudly. And we had a lot of crazy times, there was a lot of cyber attacks that made the press. I was on shift. And so how do we navigate through that, and how do we protect stuff? And I worked on that. And up until the time I decided to leave. I ended up deciding to leave to have more balance, right? I had this daughter that I was homeschooling, and she was still doing great with that and enjoying it and loving learning. And then I was healthier, and then people told me I'm smart. So I'm like, yeah, let me just try it. Let me see if I could do this non-NSA thing. And if it doesn't work, I'll just come back because I'm still cleared. And I left. And I didn't go far. I'm still badged. I'm still have my active clearance that I've had since forever. And I support them in any capacity that I can, because is in me, is a part of who I am. I'm just a little different and a little more balanced. I've chose to put my energy into things that I care about. So emerging tech, I realized that I worked on things at the agency before it became popular, like cyber. I worked on RF before cell phones boomed. When problems happened, how do we innovate and do things new? How do I create that? So I start finding jobs that I can keep doing that. Like, where can I still tackle hard problems and calm down people in chaotic situations, and then just really embrace like what technology brings. There's a lot of bad it brings, but there's a lot of good. How to balance that out.
I love that.
That's a beautiful
It's-
story.
yeah,
I love
is.
it.
It's literally like heroic
Wow.
in every sense of the word. So we like to ask this question. We talk a lot about the butterfly effect, which is this idea that these small things can have this outsized impact in the world. And I'm curious where, you've had this incredible journey. Like, where do you see the butterfly effect in your life?
So, I think a lot of people invested in me, right? And they mentored me. Eventually, I got mentors that helped me make more logical decisions. And then I was like, man, I wish I had you a long time ago. And then I do the same, right? There's a lot of people that, especially women, that have the thought that they're not important, the imposter syndrome, What can I do? How can I contribute? And I inspire, I motivate, I let them know that they all have gifts, and they can use it and strengthen them. And so I try to carry that forth and make, I guess, more butterflies out there to
I
fly.
love
Amazing. At the human level.
Yeah.
I love when people answer that way.
I know.
It's the best. It's the best.
I mean, I hate that it's almost at the end. I could talk to you all day, and you're very calming.
I know, it's true.
I know we've
understand
talked
why
about it. Yes,
all those people that you worked
I
with said
know.
that about you.
you should come here once a week and just calm us all down.
I could definitely do that. Every once in a while, something happens, and my daughter's around. She'll look at me like, "Help! Do your calming thing."
Do your
Oh
calming.
my God, yeah, I feel that.
So we end each episode with the same question. I think you know what it is, but if keeping with the name of the podcast, Eloise Page, whose code name was Iron Butterfly, if you could give yourself a code name, what would it be and why?
So I have one, and so it is Mercedes. And so I talked a lot about my national security and my intel work, and what happened very early in my career is I took this training course where they were trying to teach me how to do things securely, like what happens if someone's spying on you, and someone's watching you and following you. And I took this course and I thought it was so fun. And I was like, I want to be a trainer. And so in my free time, I became a trainer and I started training other people. So I would follow people around. And so they would take a course. I would follow them around and pretty much spy on them and see if they can pick up if I'm following them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's such a fun job. And
I need to get that job.
It's so hard to get. But I did that. So when I was wanting to buy my first house, I was like, oh, I need to work extra shifts. So I would just go do that on the weekends and get paid and follow people around. And so and right here in our own neighborhoods, actually, so there might be training exercises you don't even know. So we go into restaurants, and you might have someone follow stores, all of that. And my code name is Mercedes. And so if my daughter, her middle name, her first name was, her dad was Jason. And so we wanted, she has a half sister, Jasmine. So they were both J's.
Jace.
So I wanted her to have a J name. And so it's Jacqueline. And then her middle name is going to come from me. And I didn't want Yolanda. No one knows how to say Yolanda on this side. People in Texas have it all the time. People don't know how to say Yolanda here. I was like, I don't want a yo.
How do they say it?
Oh, all sorts of terrible ways. It's Yolanda, it's Yolanda. It's so many names. And so I didn't want her to go through anything like that. So her middle name is Mercedes, named after my radio name.
Oh.
And so that's my name. And every once in a while, I do turn my head if I hear Mercedes, because
That was
that's my code name. And technically, I'm still in the books. I just have no time to do it. But if I do get a moment, I do like helping. And it's a way of giving back, because you're training pretty much like the military and probably agents, but most of the time in this military, you can tell by their haircuts. Before they go into harm's way, you want them to be as prepared as possible. So that was what I did for fun.
That is like the best story behind a code name. Like, because it's like an actual one that you.
Also, if you ever see Yolanda in public, she could be.
If you see her at a restaurant, she might not be eating at the restaurant.
I will eat though.
Yeah, she's not an amateur.
No, I meant like it might be like
might be
not
on
on
the job.
purpose. Yeah. Well, Yolanda, this was awesome, and I will dare to say totally different than we've done over 100 interviews, and this it has been rare to get someone from NSA. First of all,
Yeah.
because like you said, I'm not speaking out of turn. They're not the most like, let's get in front of a camera and a mic and chat, right? So thank you for doing it. Thank you. I feel safer knowing that you were there, protecting us, and thank you for trusting us with your story. It's a special one. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Good.
This has been an episode of Iron Butterfly Podcast. To learn more about Iron Butterfly Media, visit our website at www.ironbutterflymedia.com. If you like the show, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and follow Iron Butterfly on social media for bonus content. You can also support us on Patreon. Lastly, we want to thank our producer, Amanda Young, and the entire Iron Butterfly team. Stay fierce, and we'll talk next time.